Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another casual stroll through Lord of the Rings Online. My name is Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on the message boards, and I am a senior world designer on Lord of the Rings, and have been doing this for a pretty long time now. So to get things going, so today's stream is going to be going through the region of Ithilien and Osgiliath. We might even hit some of the post-war Ithilien as well. But yeah, so the idea of these streams, for those of you that are unfamiliar, is they are world design focused streams in which I take us on a tour through the various regions of Lord of the Rings Online and talk about what it takes to build these regions, what kind of work goes into it, the kind of research and whatnot that we do. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into building the world of Middle Earth, and this stream is an opportunity for anyone to ask questions about world design. What the stream is not is a place for people to ask questions about things like PvMP instances, unless it's about the actual level design of the instance, lag, anything that is outside of strictly building and world design. If you do have those questions, that's awesome. And there are opportunities for you to answer those or ask those questions and get them answered by heading on over to the message boards or joining in on one of the other streams in which there's someone who has a more appropriate skill set can answer those questions for you. So for now, let me get the right time of day because it is kind of dark and gloomy out. So, I mean, not that it's going to get any less dark and gloomy here in Ithilien, but yeah. So welcome everyone. I hope those of you that attended PAX over last weekend here in Boston had a great time. If you did go, it's always a fun time, but it's a little overwhelming. I wasn't planning to go this year, and then unfortunately also got sick. So even if anyone had a spare ticket, I would not have been able to attend. But it's always a great opportunity to kind of meet up with friends, play some video games, and hopefully not freeze too much while you're standing outside waiting in line at the food trucks. So here we are in South Ithilien. Compared to the other portions of original Gondor that were afflicted by the Dawnless Day, this is very, very a much happier space. I say that mostly just because everything here is blooming. So yeah, let me take a map real quick to orient myself. I always feel like South Ithilien, and just like Ithilien and South Ithilien, North Ithilien, Osgiliath, they almost kind of feel like flyover regions. And I think that's one of the struggles with there being so much content released with the without a level cap increase. So, for example, you do all of Gondor and all of this, and it's all basically the same level cap, if not exactly the same level cap. So you don't really feel like you have to be super diligent and visit everywhere and do everything because, like, especially now with our level cap being as high as it is, you don't really get a character benefit all that much by playing through so much content. I think there's definitely benefits for that for alts. You can go through and you can play. Further, got a ways to go. I think that's beneficial for alts. Excuse me. But you do run into the issue with, at least on your first playthrough, on a new server, where you're just kind of like, there's a lot of this. The story sends you through there, but then you have the benefit of picking and choosing what areas you want to do. I think Moria does that pretty effectively too, where there's kind of like 2 or 3 leveling paths through Moria, to get your 152 to 157 level range. So you can kind of pick to go to the north or go through the middle or go through the south, and then eventually you all end up in the shadowy abyss. Well, there's a view. Will be nice when post-war South Ithilien is introduced, because this will be a very, very pretty, much more pretty region. Once that color, the colors of the skies are changed, and things are not as drab and dark. The effects of war. Gonna go off the beaten path here a little bit to go up this hill. I think this is all of these areas are tricky, but I think one of the things that kind of makes Ithilien a little trickier is it is this like border area where we are going to be hitting world changes soon, and getting back and forth here can be a little like confusing sometimes. Like there's definitely pros and cons to the way that this region is set up. But I do like that there's a lot of foliage in here, and while it is war ravaged, it is not just absolutely burnt to the ground. I don't think I've ever visited here, this particular location, on the live playthrough of a character. This is striking me as new, or at least new to me. But it does give a great view, and it gives like tantalizing hints of what might be built to the south in the future. So yeah, like I think looking at this area, I see something that is kind of a culmination of all of the work that we've put into figuring out how to build forests and whatnot. We've had a variety of different forests spread throughout Middle Earth. Some denser, some thinner, and I really think that this is just us continuing how we know how to build forests. I personally think what we started doing in the Vales of Anduin really kind of was peak forest for us. But this definitely feels like a nice version of it, especially since there are some trees in here that are being used in a way that haven't been used before, or they're brand new to this area. So there's a lot going on here that I think does a really good job of selling this as just a lush space. I think if there was any issue I'd have is like I feel like a lot of these frills are a little bit too tall. If they are doing a good job of hiding a person, they would completely envelop a hobbit. Hobbits and dwarves do typically have the like perpetual issue of not being able to go through busy fields and whatnot without disappearing. But these, I think, just kind of like if they were just squished, they can still have the same sort of like volume that they have, but if they were just like squished a little bit so they weren't as tall, I think that would go a long way towards making moving around in it a little bit easier. But I do like how lush this feels, and it's like it feels lush, but it feels abandoned, and it feels inhabited by badness all at the same time, and I think that does a good job. One of the things that I noticed as I was like researching this and going to different dungeon interiors and whatnot was that there definitely feels like, at least with the dungeons for this space, which if we have time, I'll get to and we'll take a look at, have a level of detail to them that is not. I feel like it's a step up, and at least in terms of the atmosphere in those spaces that wasn't all that present before. And little things like atmosphere go a long way towards making a space feel lived in, making a space feel populated, and honestly making it feel threatening. So, yeah. This is a nice and like hilly area too. You know, I feel like it's a good contrast compared to being in Gondor, where Gondor was very, you know, flat, and this is very. I mean, we are literally, you know, on the foothills of um, Mordor, basically, and it makes sense that this is all sorts of hilly and whatnot, leading up to, you know, up to those mountains. It's funny too because the post-war version of North Ithilien is it's called what do we call it? Mountains of Shadow is the like internal dev name for it, and so it's like very clearly like hitting home like, oh, we're heading towards Mordor, we're heading towards Mordor. So let me get to a good view real quick, and then we will. This is probably going to be one of the things that I dislike. Oh yeah, I'm never a big fan of this. I'd rather let you jump off and hit a smite volume than just have an invisible wall like this. I understand where it's useful to have stuff like that. You know, like in Belfast housing, for example, like having a barrier that you can't fall to your death in housing, like that just makes sense. Like the idea of your character getting defeated in housing because you fell off a cliff, like, doesn't feel great to me. You know, I feel like housing should be as safe of a space as possible. Dun, dun, dun. Whatever. Look at how impenetrable this is. If only someone had the strength and power to get past this barricade. And we've got our lovely Mumax here. I think for all this talk that people have about things like Balrogs and dragons and whatnot, there is a like lumberingness to these creatures that make them feel grounded in a way that those other really big creatures don't have. And maybe it's the camera shake from each step that they take is part of what's selling how imposing these animals are. You know, and I think if we get, you know, when we get to more desert-ish lands, creatures of this size like can be much more successful. You know, creatures this size are always tricky on normal landscape just because of the amount of detail we put into our landscape. And you know, I think, you know, there's detail, there's the amount of complexity in just up and down movement of hills, or, you know, rocks everywhere. Like creatures like this really need as much open, unrestricted physical space as possible. And I think that's where the biomes in and around Umbar and out towards Harad will really shine for them. Not confirming that Mumax will be in our future, but maybe. All right, so let's take a quick pause here, and I'll take a look at the various questions, if there are any. Let's see. There's one person that is lamenting daylight savings time, and I wholeheartedly agree. I wish it would just go away. Let's see. Questions. Green Tea asks, hey, there are new housing items that have a pet attached to them, such as the new Silent Hunter Garden Perch Palms. Do you think it would be possible to have the pet be toggled on and off? Or perhaps have the same item added but without the pet? If I wanted to place a few such items near each other, it looks a bit off with so many pets. Have you ever considered adding housing items that you can toggle, or is it too heavy for the server? Well, we do have some housing items that you can toggle, and really it's a local effect, and toggles will only persist within the load, you know, that version of the load of the space. So things like lights, you can turn on and off lights. One of the things that when I was solution finding to try to find a way to allow players to like paint decorative walls, that was suggested was you can just have a script on those walls that would like randomly pick a color when you double click on it. Um, so there are options out there. I think it would be fairly easy for us to make non pet versions, and it would probably be a little bit better to go that approach than to have it be a toggle. Just because then it's its own separate static item. You don't have to worry about resetting it every time you load your house, unless you do like the role playing idea of like coming home and shooing your desert cat off of the furniture. That might be entertaining for some people. All right, let's see. Yao Deco de Milu asks Mumak mounts when at current size. No comment on those. We definitely do have some thoughts and plans for new mount types in the near future, but I don't have anything beyond that tease to say on that matter. Let's see. Alrighty, let's continue our run through as more questions queue up. This is like this region is very much the calm before the storm region for for this set of the storytelling, right? Like this is your breather, because after this, it's pretty heavy with the intense story scenes and instances and whatnot. Um, so it's a little ranger slice of life, right? Like it's kind of reminiscent of Evendim running around up in here, and even like looking at the structures here, it feels like you know the ruins we have placed in Evendim are so very like low detail in comparison. They don't have the excuse me, the lushness around them that considering what Evendim looks like, you'd expect to be there. All right, we are. Oh, we have traveled far. I completely missed here, so why don't we well, let's head this way. I have teleport destinations that I can use to get us where we need to go. So we'll wander around a little bit more. Um, so Nanaris asks, actually, speaking of mounts, is there any hope we might get sailing, or has that gone out the window with the lack of sailing in Umbar? So boat pants, boat travel, or boat mounts, are something that we did seriously consider for Umbar, and it was not something that we had the time or resources for. I think, we are still going to be water adjacent for a while, and there may be opportunities for it in the future, but I would not bank. I would not bet a lot of money on them happening anytime in the near future. Um, it might be something that if we decided to do either an island neighborhood or a ship-based um, housing neighborhood, something like that might pair well with it. But again, it is not something that I can really speak to the timetable on because it's not something that we've really even penciled in anywhere. Can you tell us something or tease a little bit about the hobby we are going to get and what refresh are we to expect? So those things are both very systems driven things. The hobbies certainly got a world component to it, and we are looking forward to um, players experiencing the hobby and experiencing the hobby in the world. Um, as far as the kin refresh goes, and for more details about the hobby, those are really things that you're gonna have to wait for, unfortunately, until we have more concrete details to discuss about them. And those will likely come from someone other than the world team. Will likely be from. Oh, hold on, I'm gonna sneeze. So that information is likely to come from someone like Orion or someone else on the game systems team, from Cordovan or from Severlin. You can probably more likely expect an announcement from one of those individuals as opposed to from me here. All right, where am I now? Oh, hey, there's a roving threat. All right, we're going to make our way to the hub. See if I can split this between half doing Ithilien and half doing Osgiliath and North Ithilien, and see how that works out for us. Oh, hey, Mumak. How you doing, buddy? You're just chilling out, living your best life with all your little buddies that you are not at all accidentally stepping on. I have to say, even when I was building Outer Gondor, these cedar trees are so much, they're so great, and they are like excellent for landscaping. I don't know that they feel as good on like open landscape, but in like cultivated landscape spaces, I think they do a great job of like filling the niche of something that looks natural but would fit easily within. It feels like it would be a bit more tamed within a playable space or um, a town or a farm or something. Let's see. Other questions. Nanaris asks, for systems that do have a world-based component, crafting nodes, hobbies nodes, how much input do you have as world builders in those discussions, if any? So I think one of the things we often get tapped for is coming up with recommendations for good locations to place things. And this isn't just for hobbies, but this is just in general quests, quest item placement, places to put NPCs, those sorts of things. Very often, our systems team and our content team will, reach out to us and see if we can, come up with great spots to put things. Fishing is as a system, requires no world placement. All it does is, we associate an area, a region, with a loot table, basically. And once that is associated, the system automatically knows, like, oh, hey, I'm supposed to be able to fish in Umbar, and here are the things that I can fish out of Umbar. So there's no hand placement. There have certainly been some hobbies that we've talked about that, the things that do have a world component to them in their pitches, that it is important for us to have things be interesting, but we also want to try to leverage as systemic a method of scattering those things across the world as we possibly can, because of just how big, Lord of the Rings is. I feel like with a hobby, you really want something that can be, done globally, right? You don't want it to just be limited to, one small area. So that really puts an emphasis on us figuring out a systemic way to suggest locations that things could either be put or automatically placed through a node system, similar to like how our scene files are, things like our bushes and trees and whatnot. So it's certainly something that we are involved in the conversations of, in particular, since often placement comes down to us. We already have very full plates, so anything that we can do to mitigate extensive, this is going to sound bad, but extensive loss of time by doing that kind of placement, where if we can leverage a system to help us do that. It was like one of the things that I did for, where did I start doing it? This is a while ago, but we have this concept called entity groups where you can basically set up an arrangement of items. In this case, it's generator profiles and the nodes that can spawn things on them. and then I would just group it all together, and instead of hand placing a generator and then hand placing every single node and then linking the node to the generator, like I was just able to take that group, place the group, break it up, snap all the nodes to the ground, and be done. And those are the kinds of efficiencies that I've been keen to try to find as I've been working on the team when I came back 6 years ago, which is crazy to hear me say 6 years back on the project. All right, let's see. Will the next neighborhood have a new feature as Lindleby had fences and Rohan had lighting? I don't know that unless so we are thinking about what the next neighborhood will be, and have started doing some planning components for it. As far as what is going to be included in it, at base it will have the Lindleby package, air quotes Lindleby package, so it will have all of the housing features that Lindleby has associated with it. We're still figuring out what role mobile yard hooks have in neighborhoods, and it's easier for us to play with that in new neighborhoods rather than to try to like retrofit them into old ones. So there may be a continuing evolution of mobile yard hooks in Rivendell, or in this new housing. Yeah, I spoiled it, didn't I? In this new housing neighborhood that we're thinking about, but what that might be, we're not sure what the final result of that is going to be yet. So Finrod asks about lag. So lag is not something I can specifically speak to any resolutions on. I can reassure you that we have some of our most talented folks kind of focusing on performance, making sure that as we find things that are problematic, we then work to find solutions. Some of those solutions are in the code, and we'll go in and fix the code. Some of those solutions are in how we manage things like AI, and we'll fix those. Some of those are in how we manage placement on the landscape, and we'll do our best to address those as well. There are some things that we're going to be trying soon that will hopefully give us more data about how certain areas of the game load, and we can see if the solutions that we're going to try out in those spaces will have a greater impact on issues in the world. So yeah. Yes, drink. So I'm having a bunch of different stuff today. I'm having some tea today, so. So Lost Hobbit says, can I say how much I love the Lindleby houses? Have the 4-shell skybox with the pink and white trees from the Spring Festival, and it's so pretty, especially when the northern lights are overhead. I think while we are still limited by the housing system, I want to do what I can to provide as much flexibility as possible within that system for everyone to build the homes they want. I think one of the challenges that we have when it comes to building spaces in the future is, building spaces that feel like they are big enough, but then also make sure that we have the tools available for players to more tailor the spaces to the size and shape that they want, which a lot of people do already by doing things like, walling off rooms and reclaiming those hooks from those rooms. So there are things that we can do. I think it's tricky to think about, doing things like building a premium neighborhood and then having, and charging premium costs for it, but then really having the interiors be minuscule in comparison. So yeah, I think we're still figuring out the balance of, what is we're still figuring out the balance of like what is too big, what is too small, how many hooks where is enough, what kind of functionality should we apply to different things. Are there new types of hooks that we can introduce? So there is a lot of there are a lot of levers basically that we can kind of play with to try to improve the user experience of housing, and I think we're learning new stuff with each neighborhood that we make. All right. Danifer asks, probably more of a technical question. There are items in furniture that should logically emit light, but they do not, like Hobbit furniture, hook items, lights, and so on. They do light up, but no light is cast. But an item like Bibel's recommended reading can cast lighting on the surrounding area, and of course Rohan lighting hooks. Was there a technical limitation to why items do not cast light, and the company decided to go with hooks? So there are technical limitations on the number of lights that you can have in a scene, and as soon as your scene has more lights than that limitation allows, the scene just starts doing weird things. And that's why we try to be very limited on things that can cast lights. That's why lighting objects that you buy from the furnishers only go in light hooks. They do not go in any other hooks because we still need to maintain some degree of control over how the lighting situation is in. Let's go this way, head towards, like we're going towards Minas Morgul first. Because this was a fun tease, I remember playing through here and like being able to just almost get there, but not quite. So yeah, there is that limitation to kind of make it so that you do not ruin your own scene. I think there is a small selection of decorations that can either can cast their lights or do cast, be made to cast their lights by using them. And that selection is very limited. We don't do a ton of them, and they are very super special case. So yeah, so that's why that limitation is there. I think instead of allowing light sources that you place on hooks and you use all those lights, like we're going with a much more simplified lighting experience for the region or for housing. So Jaguar says, loved the look of Rohan housing, but the interior was so drab and dark looking on visit that it prevented myself and others I know from purchasing Rohan houses for a while. Yeah, I think like we had to light those base interiors in a way that, in a way that didn't really reflect what you could do in those spaces, because we needed to kind of leave room for the opportunity for you to place your own lighting hooks in there. I think lighting hooks are exciting. They're great. They allow you that additional extra avenue of customization to a space. But it can be. I can see where it would be confusing if you have never had the concept of a lighting hook before. Patty McGinty says, would you ever go back and retexture the houses and some decos so they look more up to date? I think that is something that could happen in the future. A lot of the exteriors for all of the different original neighborhoods, for example, anyways, are by and large just versions of decoration, of houses and whatnot that already exist in the landscape. The Bree stuff is all stuff that is used in Breland. The Shire Hobbit interiors are all Shire Hobbit interiors, so they all have here we go. They all have a version of them that is used elsewhere. So updating them in one place updates them in both places, and that would be a great little bit of a time saving for us. So here we are in sunny North Ithilien. I figured I would make this run up through here, and then we'll go hit up Osgiliath in a little bit. Much more beautiful to look at than what we were seeing in South Ithilien, in part because we are past the war now. We are in post Pelennor Gondor, so there is no longer the dawnless day looming on the top of us. We are now in a no longer pristine, but we are now in a calmer time, even though there are orcs everywhere. But that is a great view of Osgiliath there in the distance. All right, so there is a gate in Erebor that stops other players from entering. Will this functionality be implemented in the future neighborhoods so we can forbid players from entering our gardens? Does that actually work? I had been trying, one of the things I had been trying to do with Erebor was have that front gate be something that could only be used by the owner and people on the guest list. And I was having problems making it work. And I had thought I had been told that it didn't work. But if it does work, then great. That's exciting. Edith Aldora says, I wish there was a way to scale housing items or that smaller versions were available. The shell from the Umbar Allegiance reward is gorgeous, but it's too huge to put on the wall in my dwarf house. I do have I have a number of requests in for quality of life improvements and whatnot in relation to the housing system that will hopefully eventually one day happen. And things like allowing yourself to, allowing housing objects to be rotated on more than one axis, doing scaling within limitations, for things like wall surfaces, being able to scale and translate to and move the textures, are things that I've put in requests for. That is no guarantee that I will get those things and then be able to subsequently give them to you. But they are things that we're thinking about in terms of just like how can we further, what are things that we could do to improve and provide greater flexibility in this system as we know it. Let's see. Paladin's Tavern says, how's it going, folks? I think it's going great, aside from my head cold making me a bit foggy. But otherwise, it is it's trying the sunshine out right now. We've had some rainy days here. This is a great... I really like the look of this as well. Just the water flowing through the ruins, like nature has reclaimed. That is the big takeaway from looking at stuff like that, is that not even Gondor is safe from the ravages of nature. Nanaris asks, the change that happened with water with Umbar. A lot of the old waters had their shaders restored to them so that they resembled very beautiful lake. But this change was also applied to some of the new dynamic waters, and it has a strange effect, like an oil sheen. that is really visible. Do you have plans to change this? And if so, is there any timeline? So that is a as we have time for it polish thing. There are some water types here and there that I've kind of flagged and sent along to our artists to take a look at as well. So it is a big game, and we do our best to try to stay on top of stuff like that, but we don't always get everything. So this water stuff is this is new water tech for us. So I think we're still just collectively kind of trying to figure out how to best use this new rendering tech that we got. Because what it is it's effectively, in addition to normal water look and feel that we put on things, it's trying to add some additional stuff to it to make it look like it's moving and flowing. And I think for the ocean in Umbar, it looks really, really great. But there are a lot of water types that have our old dynamic water system in it that we then need to kind of go back to and kind of readdress over time. All right, let's see. Any more questions? When do the other squirrel types get their own houses, like the red squirrels in Rohan? I didn't realize Rohan had a red squirrel house. There's always been this kind of interesting tension amongst the squirrels in Middle Earth, in large part because I think this is how it is the red squirrels are native to the United Kingdom. The gray squirrels are an invasive species to it. And unfortunately, because they're invasive, there's really this battle between, do we include them as fauna here in the game or not? So, yeah, it is, the red squirrels versus gray squirrels has lore. It has lore to it. This is definitely a cliff. This area, much like stepping into King's Gondor after having run around in original Gondor, stepping here into North Ithilien is just such a breath of fresh air in comparison. It is brighter and happier and sunshinier and all of that, and it's nice to see that. Again, I've talked in the past about the whole concept of needing needing breathers in between dark and dismal places so that you're not always just feeling like you are under oppression the whole time. And this is definitely the nice breather in between a lot of dark stuff. The further north we go, the closer we get to the wastes and dark, bad, evil, bad stuff. Let's see. Right. I'm just going to Cyclops my way around here. Yes, this is what I've been looking for. I forgot that this was this far north. I, for some reason, was thinking it was further south. Our fake dungeon space. Let me turn off my cloak, because I think there is a day file change that happens in here, too. I wish, this is a very cool space. it's a fake interior. And this is all like hand created geometry um, in order to have this contiguous kind of dungeon space. I wish we had the opportunity to like punch holes in our terrain and kind of build out tunnels and whatnot inside it. Not so much in a voxel way, but kind of more in a classic. I think Unreal does this as well, where it's just like you select a set of polygons within the mesh to just basically make a hole in, and then you build with entities and structures through that hole. And a great spot for a sunset. But yeah, see, the challenging thing is we have to fight with shadows and whatnot in this space because of it. I've been playing a good amount of Enshrouded lately, and that game, it is such a like, and I think part of my recent experience with that is part of why I'm like waxing philosophical a little bit on, being able to just like punch holes in terrain and build tunnels, because that game does such a great job of making the, build and creation process so just simple and friendly, that you can just kind of go at it and not have to worry about, not worry too much, anyways, about your resources and doing a considerable amount of work to gather all the parts you need in order to build your base. We work with Legos, which has its pros and cons as well, but our terrain is non-deformable, which there are times where I feel like something like that might be fun to achieve in our engine, but I doubt that. I doubt something like that will ever happen for this game as far as the engine goes. All right, so once there was a third-party software allowing one to dramatically increase the viewing distance in Lotro. Any plans to implement something similar? So that is one of the things that we have been talking about recently in terms of trying to find ways to have some low-cost ways to increase the pretty factor, basically, of the game. We have the concept of near terrain and far terrain. The near terrain is what you're seeing right here, right in front of me, and then the far terrain is what's down there in the distance. And unfortunately, it's not super pretty. It's a low res terrain with low res textures and whatnot. So one of the concepts we did have was finding a way to allow players to extend not how much is loaded around them in terms of land blocks, but extend how much of the full landscape mesh around them would be loaded. So you could extend it out an extra ring of land blocks, 2 ringer land blocks. And I'm pretty sure we have good documentation on what would need to happen for that to happen. It's just, do we have the time for it? What are the performance implications to enabling that as well? We don't want to, we basically, we don't want to introduce it and then have it be such a degradative gameplay experience because of it. How are we doing? We're getting there. We're getting there. So yeah, so we want to be, we like the idea. We just want to make sure we have a sense of what the costs of it are going to be on performance. So Denifer says viewing distance also affects in Ettenmore how far you can actually see players. So what we're talking about here would not extend what objects you can see. It would only extend the high resolution terrain distance that you can see. So you'd only see the terrain improve. You wouldn't see like, oh, more rocks are loading, more bushes are loading. It would be what is loaded, the trees, the monsters, the NPCs, the other players, that would still stay at the current local range. We're talking something that would extend the range of the height map. So Patty McGinty says, sorry if this was asked, but are you guys already working on any new housing areas or thinking of adding new ones? I'm always thinking of adding new ones. We are in the process of concepting the next one. Concepting and planning the next one. I don't have any ETA for it, but it is something that we are thinking about. One of our other world designers expressed an interest in getting some experience with the housing system. So I get a break from building a neighborhood, and he gets to jump on board and try his hand at it, because I think he hasn't built one since the original housing neighborhoods. I think he did a lot of work on the Breland and original and Valathorn neighborhoods. I think were the ones that he worked on. So sort of abstract question scenario, but what game systems from Lotro have you engaged with as a player? Like, have you ever tried PvMP, raiding, or RP? Did any of these experiences influence the way you build out the world? So I am mostly a solo player. I don't have a ton of time to dedicate to evening time game time, and there are a lot of games to play. I always make sure that I play through the content experiences that we're releasing, so that I can, be boots on the ground and know, like, oh, this quest, these quests in this region are having me kill all of these things, and I'm finding that there's not enough of these things. So, like, in a later patch, I will make sure to go through and introduce new, little POIs of the things that need to be killed, or that sort of stuff. I used to do instances a lot, but I found that over the years, and I know this position of mine will probably, there will likely be some criticism of me as a developer because of this, but I don't usually engage in endgame content, largely because I don't often have the time available to dedicate to chasing a raid, to like powering myself up. Whereas, like, I enjoy playing the games for the narrative. I enjoy playing for a more casual kind of experience. No, I can't go through. All right, I have a solution to this problem. Boop. Don't know if the game is going to like me doing this, but we'll find out. So yeah, so that's usually where things go for me. I think one of the things that can be very hard for people in my kind of position is to play the games we make as a player. It's very hard to do that, and I try not to. I try not to let my play experience get too much in the way of how I think I should be developing, because I know that I am not always the target audience for whatever a given location is, whatever a given dungeon is, instance is. And I think I am in somewhat of a privileged position in that, because I am a level designer, most of what I build doesn't always, and for at least for endgame stuff, doesn't involve the gameplay component of it. So I can build what I need to build, and then I can rely on my other teammates to know what is going to be best for, a certain subset of the player base. All right, where are we? We're up here at Andros. I want to get back down here to Osgiliath, but I don't think we have the time. I'm gonna speed us up. We did not get to any of the interiors today, and I feel like there. I feel like that's become a bit of a theme. Is we just run out of time to do the interiors. But I'm going to try to get through a little bit more of Osgiliath. This is the after battle version of Osgiliath. So it's not quite as scary, dangerous, I think, as OG Osgiliath is, but it's definitely a kind of choke point bottleneck for players crossing the river. I remember the very first time I came through here as a player, honestly being kind of a little frustrated that I just couldn't go right up the middle. Because as you look at the map and it's like, oh, I should just be able to go right up through there, and it doesn't work out. I think this area too, like looking at this is an interesting area. Or does it work out? Maybe it works out in this version. It didn't work out in the other version. I think that's what it was. It's interesting to see the use of structural assets as part of the scene file. That's something that we've been doing a little bit more and more to help ease the amount of time it takes us to build something. So we can go through and we can use our scene file system to put down rubble and debris, broken crates and whatnot, so that we don't have to hand place things ourselves unless we want to create a very specific scene. Because sometimes something that is a significant time investment is doing a lot of fine detail decoration. I'm going through all of that right now, actually, while working on the update 40 landscapes, and yeah, it is a lot of work going through and hand placing deco. So anything we can do to speed that up, we try to. All right, let's head across the bridge so we can at least wander through Osgiliath. And I'll see about answering a few more questions as we go through. So I will say, too, in regards to the kind of player that I was, I remember, I've made jokes about this in the past, but back when this game was in alpha, my main was a burglar, and it was a point of pride for me that as we were doing playtesting on things like Fornost, I was able to take my burglar in as a main tank, main heal, main CC, main DPS class. That's how busted burglars were back in the day. So, fun times, fun times. Let's see. Patty McGinty says, would it be possible to add NPCs as deco like Bilbo, Frodo, Gandalf, as so we can have them in our house? It's definitely possible. I think those are always a case of when time allows for it, we introduce more and more of those things. I had fun making the intro quest for Lindleby, in which you can get your various Hobbitland town guards and other characters, getting your sleeping Deepclaw, for example. So I think those are fun little things. I think we're cautious about allowing players to have any NPC guards that show up that have a specific NPC name. I don't think the character that is Bilbo, I don't think its name is Bilbo anywhere. It's just your visitor. So all right. So we'll leave it here. From here, our next stream, I suppose, we'll be heading north up into Old Anorian. Old Anorian and into Far Anorian, and the Beacon Hills. I think that's a good aim for us for our next stream, because that'll kind of follow the path of the story. So that's our plan next. Though I will be honest, I think our next stream is actually going to be a preview stream for Update 40. There may be some stuff that's not done yet for that, but I think we'll be very far along enough that it'll be a great opportunity to do some previews for that landscape. So let's see. I will have you know, Nanaris, that what I was doing as a burglar in Alpha and basically being all of everything for a group wasn't exploiting. It was just cleverly using conjunctions and crowd control to my advantage. Our fellowship maneuvers to my advantage. So, all right, let's go through the last couple of questions. So Jennifer says, what kind of ideas are you brainstorming about housing and in the neighborhood? Things like NPCs that interact with each other to make things look a little bit more lively, more kinship-wide events like kinship invasion, with the kinship house being invaded and the kinships must be down to destroy. Okay. So I think there are some things we can do to make housing more interesting. Those are going to require content time, and we don't always have available content time to do those things. It'd be nice if we did, but we're all very busy people, and housing neighborhoods often happen in lull times for the world team when we're kind of in between working on updates. So let's see. Scrolling down. All right. Well, I don't see any other real questions to tackle. So with that in mind, I want to thank everyone for hanging out today and going on me with this stroll through North and South Ithilien and quick stroll through Osgiliath. I actually have to head off right now in order to get to an incidents planning meeting for our fall update. So that'll be fun and exciting. So I hope everyone has a great afternoon. I hope you're all that are in the Northern Hemisphere anyways, having a great spring as it's starting to try to do its thing. So anyways, thank you everyone. I hope you have a great afternoon, and we will see you on the next stream.